أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brothers and sisters, hope you're all well. Alhamdulillah. It doesn't escape me that it's a bit odd for the topic to be how to survive online and the digital world, and have literally like 2-3 laptops and tablets and devices and stuff on the table. But I think that's all part of the theme, right, of today's discussion. We'll be here from until let's say 9 p.m. inshallah, and this is our first part in a 2-part series inshallah, right? How to survive online. How many times have you checked your phone and maybe you hear a notification bell, one thing leads to another, and then you realize it's been half an hour? Yeah? How many times have you picked your phone up or turned on your laptop or tablet, whatever, and then a few seconds later you think, why did I pick this up again? Yeah. Show of hands, has this happened to you? Yeah. That means about 20% of the audience is honest. This is by design. This is by design. It's not a cynical interpretation. I'm going to describe why I say this, right? That this is in fact by design, right? So the next half an hour or so, we're going to get a bit scared. It's going to be a bit of doom and gloom, but the idea is to empower ourselves with this information, with this knowledge, right? Because like it or not, we're living in a changing world. And if you're under, I think, 11 or 12 years old, especially, but generally if you're under, say, 25, you're living in a very interesting place where your whole life has been in the age of high-speed internet. And this has an impact on how we think, our relationships with other human beings, our relationships with our parents, how we get information, right? How we go about learning things, how we build a picture up of the world around us and events going on, right? These are all connected. But before that, in order for us to understand that, I want us to go through a quick story about, just to give a bit of background, right? So as the story goes, for hundreds of years, maybe thousands, human beings were primarily living in kind of gregarian societies. Our main pastime, you can say, was that, yeah, farming, rearing animals, growing things. That was our agricultural economy, right? And then as the story goes, we moved into factories, right? Industrial revolutions. We started exploiting fossil fuels, right? Instead of man and animal power. And then as the story goes, as many of us are aware now, many people moved out of the factories and into this generic clip art representation, right, of a new type of economy, a new type of age, right? What do we call this new age?
Technological revolution.
Technological revolution. Yeah. Anything else anyone's heard? Digital, e-commerce. Yeah. So some people call this an information economy, right? And it should become bit clear, inshallah, why we're talking about this in a few minutes. Some people said we live in an information economy. Information is the thing that, is the new, you can say, oil. Right? People are concerned with buying, selling, managing information. But some people made quite an important observation. They said, wait a second, an economy or economics is how a society deals with its scarce resources. How a society deals with, something which is rare. And if anyone's been on any website, anyone's searched anything on Google, they said, if there's one thing there's no shortage of, there's no scarcity of, its information. It's all over the place. So what is that thing that we are actually managing? What is the scarce resource in today's day and age? Time? Very good. What else?
Paper.
It's our attention. Right? There's billions and billions of megabytes, gigabytes of information out there. Right? But what people are competing for, what's being bought and what's being sold, is our attention. Right? And this ranges from the app developers, right, to the computer games developers, to the people that are designing devices, to any website, right? And now any business online even, any commercial enterprise, they're all doing one thing. Amongst their own specialities, they're all trying to get one thing, a bigger and bigger slice of your and my attention. Now, one reason this is very important to realize is that when you realize that you're in an attention economy, that people primarily are, and companies are primarily looking for bigger and bigger slices of your and my attention, because let's face it, we each only have 24 hours in a day, right? We're working for part of that time, we're at school, we're sleeping, we're eating for the part of that time. So there's a smaller and smaller slice of how much attention we have going around. And companies, games, apps developers, they're competing for a bigger and bigger slice of our attention. Now what this means is, especially if something is free, online, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, social media sites, whether it's online games, whether it's, I don't mention any specific companies, but any online shopping store or whatever. Especially if these services are free, it means one thing: you are the product, not the consumer. There's no such thing as a free lunch. Yeah? In an attention economy, if you're using a device, you're surfing the net, you're on Google, you're on YouTube, you're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, whatever it is. We need to be aware that our attention is the product here that's being bought and sold. That's important to know, because once you know this and some of the background into this, you can arm yourself, we can arm ourselves, we can mitigate the risks of some of these services, devices and so forth. Right? You are the product, not the consumer. Someone might say, so what? What's the difference between this thing here and the radio that was invented 100 years ago or whatever? When was the radio invented? I don't know. I should have Googled this. Ironically.
One-sided communication,
One-sided communication, yeah. But when the radio was invented, people surely complained and saying, look, all these people are gathering around these little boxes, they're not speaking to each other anymore, they're not going out, they're not enjoying the sunshine, they're just sitting listening to the radio. It affected how people behave, right? Yeah? Let's be honest here. Some people might think that this is just a continuation. When the TV was invented, people probably complained, saying, look, nobody's listening to the radio anymore. Yeah? This is changing how societies are working. This is This is shaking things up. And we survived. Right? Things aren't perfect, but we're still here, right? As a species. We didn't wipe us out. When the telephone was invented, right? And I don't mean the smartphone. They used to be connected to the wall using a wire. Trust me, it was. People complain saying, look, these people are spending hours talking to each other on the phone. They're not going out. They're not meeting each other. It's affecting communication, it's affecting blah, blah, blah. It's true. That did happen. And we did survive. It wasn't there was an impact, but it wasn't the end of the world, right? So someone might think, what's the difference between the smartphone and then? People complained. Maybe they held talks in mosques saying about the dangers of the radio or whatever. Right? But look, we're here now. We survived. We've started using these things for good. What's the difference between that stuff and this thing here, this smartphone? And there is one very, very, very important difference. I'm not saying, don't use a smartphone, obviously. Hello. Right? I'm not saying it's haram, obviously, either. But we have to be aware of one very important difference between then and technology now. And that is, behind this device, you have hundreds of these fellas. These guys are called attention engineers. So, we said we live in an attention economy, that our attention is what's being competed for, bought and sold against advertising, for example, especially if something is free, like Facebook, like all of the main social media apps, right? Now these attention engineers, they're very clever people, and they are using hundreds of years worth of accumulated wisdom in psychology into what makes us tick, what makes us click, what makes us tap, right? From every little detail, from the way something looks, the site looks, to the characteristic notification sound that it makes when you get a new message or something pops up, right? All of these things are meticulously designed with an intimate knowledge of human psychology. And their job is to do one thing, right? This little molecule here is called dopamine. Who's heard of dopamine? Right? Everyone's heard of dopamine because it's like the fun hormone. Yeah, it's to do with rewards, that feeling of achieving something. When you're looking for something, you find it, you get a dopamine hit. Right? It's used in, obviously, very, very addictive things. It's exploited in addictive things. Cigarettes, alcohol, other drugs and so forth. Right? Attention engineers, they know how to use and exploit dopamine circuits in our brains, especially in young people. It doesn't mean they're evil people. There might be some here, right? It doesn't mean they're evil people, but because we live in an attention economy, because our attention is what is being competed for and bought and sold, these very clever people with very advanced tools, they have one job in mind: increasing time spent on site. Increasing the time we spend on this device, this game, this app, right? Now, if that was just the case, then we would say, so what? For decades, if not centuries, people have been competing for various aspects of our resources, our time, our money, right, our energy. People have always been competing to sell us things, for example. What's the difference here now? Why are we being so stressed about, attention engineers and these devices? The problem is they're really, really, really good at it. Right? MashaAllah. They're very good at it. Let me give you an example. Michael Kaczynski is a researcher at Stanford University. He did some research with a group in Cambridge. Right? Just looking at the publicly available information on your Facebook profile. Right? Who's got a Facebook profile here? Probably everyone over 18, right? Instagram profile? Instagram's owned by Facebook anyway. Okay, it's the same thing. Similar stuff's used by them, right? And we'll go into what that is. So his team, they looked at just one openly available, publicly measurable thing, and that is your Facebook likes, right? You're going through different pages, you're in the Facebook ecosystem, and you click like on these pages, right? They said, with knowledge of 15 of your Facebook likes, we can predict aspects of your personality better than your average co-worker, right? With knowledge of 150 of your Facebook likes, we can predict aspects of your personality better than your mother. And with knowledge of 300 of your Facebook likes, we can predict your personality better than your spouse. And he concluded that, it's a nice quote of his, our smartphone is a vast psychological questionnaire that we are constantly filling out, both consciously and unconsciously. Right? So what have we said so far? Number one, we're living in an attention economy, that apps, games, services, social media sites, they are competing over, especially if they're free, they're competing over a bigger and bigger slice of our attention. Right? They're using very, very clever people with an accumulated knowledge in psychology and brain chemistry even, in order to do one thing, increase the time spent on these devices, time spent on site. Number three, they have intimate access, or they have access to some of the most intimate parts of our own personality that maybe we don't know about ourselves, that our mothers, our fathers, our wives, our husbands don't know about us. And this is just, by the way, from the publicly available Facebook likes. What Facebook actually knows about you and me, our likes, dislikes, people we message, things that we hover over, stop for a second and then carry on, how fast we're scrolling, things that we type and then delete without even sending them. This is also saved in Facebook's servers. It's information about you and me. And this is not even going into the other stuff, the metadata in terms of where we're using our device, right? How long, who we're connected to, and so forth, right? Now, what complicates this even more is this guy. Who recognizes who that is? I think his kunya was Abu Abdullah Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khawarizmi, right? The Latin name was Algorithmus, something like that. And he is credited with inventing algorithms. Here are 4 examples of pictures that I put there to make me look clever. Yeah. If you ask me how these work, I can't tell you. But an algorithm is basically a very detailed set of instructions. Right? If you think of an algorithm, and obviously in this case an algorithm is a set of instructions given to some kind of computer program to carry out. If you think of an algorithm, for example, for baking a cake, yeah, it would be a very detailed recipe of how to bake that cake. Crack the eggs, put it in a bowl, do this, do that. An algorithm is just similar to that, but to be carried out by a computer. If this happens, then do this. When this happens, then do that. When that person does this, then do that. Right? Now, every social media site, right? Every major social media site, it has its own proprietary algorithms, which means their own specific algorithms that, it's their intellectual property. They created them. and many of them are artificial intelligence, self-learning algorithms. Right? They're taking these vast psychological questionnaires that we have in our pockets that we're always consciously and unconsciously filling out. Right? That huge amount of information about us, and they're using it to do what? They're programmed to do what? Increase time spent on site. Right? And remember, who is the consumer here? Not us. We are the product. Our attention is the product. The people who made these algorithms in the first place, they're not evil people. Right? But the way things are, the rewarding of increasing the time spent on site, the huge amounts of information, personal information that is stored on these servers that these algorithms have access to about us, what makes us tick, what makes us click, this is geared towards one thing: increasing the time spent on that site. And every social media app out there will have its own set of algorithms. Now probably all of them machine learning algorithms. And what kind of world does that create? Who's been to Facebook? Not Facebook, YouTube. This new website called YouTube. Yeah, you can watch videos and stuff there. I'm not going to ask you for a show of hands, but remember the last time you're on YouTube, okay? Picture in your mind. You're watching a video, maybe it was like a 5-10 minute video, kittens, whatever. What happens when the video ends? Yeah? The next one automatically starts. Suggestions. Now, is it me, or are the suggested videos at the end of the video that we watch, are they really, is it me, or are they just really interesting? I mean, you rarely just watch one video on YouTube, don't you? Especially if you're signed in. It's almost as though YouTube's proprietary algorithms, which is owned by Google, it's almost as though they have access to our intimate personality details and they know what we like to watch. No, actually, no. That's wrong. Not what we like to watch, what we will watch. What's the difference? What's the difference between something you like to watch, something you like watching, and something you'll watch? Maybe a bit too philosophical for a Friday night. They know your personality, yeah? You're watching the next, you're more geared towards watching the next video, yeah? Right?
Sometimes you might actually disagree with something, but you still watch it because it triggers that sort of interest.
Excellent. The artificial intelligence algorithms have realized that, wait a minute, if we really want to increase time spent on site, don't just show them stuff that they like. They realize that sometimes we'll watch things that we really hate. We'll watch things that we really, really boil our blood. That will make us angry. Right? Or just things that trigger some primitive, primal emotions in us. Right? That's not good for us. That's not something we like. Might not even be something true. But it's something that will keep us glued to the screen for longer. It'll keep us clicking the watch next. Or in some people's case, the autoplay. Right? Zainab Tufekci, she's a techno-sociologist. Yeah, that's a thing. She studies social movements and the internet. She did a small experiment with this YouTube proprietary algorithm. She said, let me clear all of the cookies, all the data and stuff. Let me use a fresh machine and Just watch, for example, a Donald Trump campaign video. Okay? What comes next after that one? Lo and behold, another Donald Trump video. Another one. And she said eventually it was getting more and more and more right-wing. Until eventually I was in full-blown white supremacist KKK videos. So let me start again. Let me search for a Bernie Sanders video. A Hillary Clinton video. Right? Watched a Hillary video. Then that finished. Okay, another Hillary video was recommended. Another one. Then a Bernie Sanders one. Right? Getting more and more and more. Slowly getting more left-wing. Until she said, I was on really weird left-wing conspiracy theorist videos. Right? She said, it's almost as though you're never extreme enough for YouTube's algorithms. It realized it's not a person sitting there saying, I want to mislead you with all this fake news and make you ruin your life and make you into a bubble. No. It wasn't designed to do this. We not no reason to believe that it was. But YouTube's proprietary artificial intelligence algorithms now, they're so advanced that she said when the creators of these algorithms now look at them, they're sometimes thousands of matrices long. When they look at them, it's like somebody looking at a brain scan. I can't make sense of that. And it's working so well, it's making billions and billions of dollars in advertising revenue that nobody wants to touch it now. But is it good for us? Absolutely not. She even did an interesting fun one. She said, let me look at I was looking at some vegetarian videos. Videos about vegetarianism. Right? Simple, you don't eat meat. Right? It's vegetarians. Another video about vegetarianism, another video about vegetarianism, and eventually it started showing me videos about veganism. Bachara can't even eat eggs. Drink milk. More and more and more extreme in any kind of path that you take. And this is the danger of us living in an attention economy, right? Where companies are now using sophisticated artificial intelligence algorithms, are willing to do pretty much anything it takes to increase the time we spend on a particular site, device, game, for example. And they have access to intimate details of our personality. What type of world does that create? Who knows this guy? Yeah, Steve Jobs. This guy. Young brothers here, how many of you, sometimes your parents tell you, turn off that device, and you don't feel like turning it off? Yeah, maybe one or two of you, or all of you. How many times, young brothers, your dad tells you, turn off the game now, turn off the iPad, it's time to do something else, right? And you feel inside, I don't want to do this. And maybe you're thinking, I wish my dad was more like Steve Jobs, right? Look at him, he invented the iPad, he appreciates this kind of stuff. Maybe you wish that. But a journalist once asked Steve Jobs, how do your kids like the new iPad? They must love it, right? He said, I don't know, we haven't given it to them. We limit how much technology our kids use at home. Another person, former editor of Wired magazine, famous tech guy, said, my kids accuse me and my wife of being fascists and overly concerned about tech. And they say that none of their friends have the same rules. Sound familiar? That's because we have seen the dangers of technology firsthand. I've seen it in myself. I don't want to see that happen to my kids. Facebook's, this is what Sean Parker said, founding president of Facebook. He resigned from the company in its early days. He said Facebook's architects exploited a vulnerability in human psychology. Right. Another quote there, Times columnist. Tech companies understand what causes dopamine surges in the brain, and they have their products, and they lace their products with hijacking techniques that lure us in and create compulsion loops. Okay? And again, I wouldn't say that necessarily the companies, the people involved, they're evil, they have an evil intention, but they're in this is why we talked about the attention economy. Right? About just apps, games, services being geared towards rewarding increasing time spent on site. What is this? This is a picture of a human brain. And this slide is about some of the features of a young person's brain, right, that is consciously or unconsciously exploited by these services. And young person here means all of us under 25. Yeah? Okay, I'm not under 25. Right, but thanks for not laughing. You know why your car insurance is supposed to get cheaper over 25, brothers? Right, this is why. Under the age of 25, we have two things that are a bit odd about our brains. Number one, we have an overactive striatum, which is involved in the rewards, instant rewards kind of sensation. Right, this is what is associated with a lot of dopamine production. Right. Secondly, we have an underdeveloped prefrontal cortex. Right. So the striatum is linked to dopamine, linked to motivation and reward. Our prefrontal cortex is linked to what tames these dopamine circuits. Right. When we have an urge to do something, it's our prefrontal cortex that says, wait a second, don't do that. And this is linked to anticipating the consequences of our actions. Okay, the prefrontal cortex is like the dad of the brain. It's telling you, don't do this, don't do that. Okay, these two things combined for us young people, particularly under 25 years old, they produce two things. Number one, an increased sensitivity, got it written down here, an increased sensitivity to instant rewards, right? And a diminished sense of risk, a diminished ability to calculate risks. This is why, especially when you're just, a young person, car insurance is very, very expensive. I remember when I was 18, my father, rahimahullah, he got me a car, really fast car. Right? For then at least, it was really fast. And it's a miracle I didn't kill myself or somebody else. I remember now going on the same roads and thinking, how on earth did I overtake someone here going around this corner? Why the heck did I go this fast on this road? Has the width of the road changed or something? The road's the same. The power of the car is the same. What change was up here? I would never do some of the stunts, some of the maneuvers that I would do back then. Right? And this is what you get from just age. Those parts of our bodies that's still developing, right? They help us make more informed decisions later on. That's why when we're young, we need people's advice who are older than us. I read a really good quote a few months ago, Tarbiyah quote. By the time you realize your father was right, you have a son telling you you're wrong. Yeah? It's a good one, isn't it? By the time you finally realize your father was right, you have a son now telling you you're wrong. Right? But we have to learn from this. Okay. Now, what does this lead to? Okay, who knows what these are? Snapchat. They've implemented something called streaks. This is a prime example of weaponizing dopamine circuits. Right? When you Snapchat, you're sending somebody a message. Right? You send like a short video message to your pal. If you do that 2, 3, 4 days in a row, you start getting this tiny little flame. I don't know if they still have this. A researcher called Emily Weinstein, she accidentally came upon this. Right? Just for having that little logo in the corner next to you and that person, she found that children, young people, teenagers, were taking pictures of random things like the wall, the carpet, just to keep that little logo up going. So that for 100 days I've had a streak with this person. Does that increase the quality of that person's relationship? No. Sometimes she found that people actually were giving their passwords and access to their accounts to other people so that when they went on holiday, they could keep that streak alive. This is a prime example of weaponizing these dopamine circuits in our brains. Right? And this leads to what? FOMO. Fear of missing out. A new type of anxiety disorder, artificially generated, where young people, there's an immense pressure on young people to be available online 24/7. Right? Last year, it's gotten worse now. 2016, they did a survey and 1 in 5 secondary school students wakes up, interrupts their own sleep, wakes up in the middle of the night to check their messages. Right? I told you this was scary. Yeah. Sisters in particular, young women in particular, you suffer from the same things boys suffer from, plus one more. They found that young women, they take to social media disproportionately when they are anxious, lonely, stressed, depressed. Right? This is why they said, because of the exploitation of dopamine circuits, because of the randomized reward, right? When you get a notification, sometimes, and you check your phone, you check your whatever you're on your laptop, your tablet. Sometimes it's important, sometimes it's not. Right? Sometimes it's what you're expecting, sometimes it's not. This randomized reward behavior actually strengthens heightens the sensitivity to dopamine. This is similar to how you train a dog to do tricks, right? When you want to train a dog, you don't give it like a Scooby snack whenever it does the thing that you want it to. No, you randomize the reward. Sometimes you give it, sometimes you don't. The same thing that these phones are doing to us. So one thing, practical thing you can do, turn off push notifications. Right? Turn off the notification on your phone and be in charge of your own use. Say to yourself, I will check my own phone between this time and that time. That's when I will check it. If I get a message, fine, fair enough, I'll get a message, I'll deal with it. If I don't, no problem. The worst thing we can do, especially if we're young, is leave the notifications on. So every time it vibrates, we get another dopamine hit. Every time the ping goes off, you get another dopamine hit. And this creates a compulsion loop, right? Based on dopamine, right? This is why they said social media, especially for young people, is more addictive than cigarettes and alcohol, right? It destroys willpower. It's leading to so many attention deficit disorders, right? Another feature of notifications, when you're doing something, you're in the zone, okay, and you're distracted by these devices. Researchers showed that it takes you on average 25 minutes to regain the same level of concentration as before you were distracted, and it increases your distractibility over the next 3 hours, something like 5-fold. right? There are many, many problems that come with leaving these notifications on. So turn them off. This is one piece of advice. Right, we're going to go through some, inshallah, practical tips for us to stay safe, and next week in more detail. But remember one thing, this is one golden rule. Turn off the notifications so that you're using your phone and your phone is not using you. Okay? You're in charge. This is Zainab. Okay? Zainab takes to... It's not a real person, obviously. Yeah, I made her up. Zainab takes to social media like a growing number of young women when she is feeling anxious or depressed. Right? She goes on Facebook, she goes on Snapchat, she goes on YouTube, she goes on Instagram. Now what did we say? Because of the nature of how the algorithms are set up, the attention economy that we're in, these services automatically, nobody is now behind it, nobody's wants to ruin her life, but automatically they serve her content that will keep her in that same state of mind in which she goes to those devices, those services. So it will show her things that keep her in a perpetual state of depression, in anxiety, in loneliness, because that is what increases time spent on site. We need to be aware of this because it's all automated now. Right? We can't have the trust in machine learning algorithms. And a human being, you can trust them, yes. But this is what is happening. What should we call him? Zaid? Yeah? This is Zaid. He goes to social media. When he's angry, he wants to blow off some steam. Right? And lo and behold, whenever he goes on Instagram, whenever he goes on Facebook, the algorithms show him stuff that keeps him angry. So shows him stuff that will get him into arguments with people he disagrees with. Right? Why? Doesn't show him things that will calm him down. Doesn't show him things that are good for him. Doesn't show him things that are good for his mental health, his spiritual health, or even things that are true. It shows him things that will increase the time he spends on site. Right? Now, having said that, we'll go through these things next week, but having said that, many of us come to this this tension now. Right? On the one hand, our parents, our families are telling us one thing. Yeah? Yusuf, turn off that device. No more Fortnite. Right? Turn off Snapchat. Fatima. We're eat together with us. On the one hand, you have your families. Remember those people? Flesh and blood. People that pay the rent. And on the other hand, you have these artificial intelligence algorithms geared to do one thing: increase the time you spend on that service, on that site, on that app, on that game. Now, who do you think has your long-term interests at heart? It's a no-brainer, right? Yeah. Your family has the two people in this whole earth, right, that have your long-term interests at heart are your mother and your father. Sometimes they'll say things to you, they'll tell you things that go against what the Facebook, the Snapchat, the Fortnite algorithms they want you to do. But just remember this one thing, brothers and sisters. The algorithms are only interested in getting your attention for the next few minutes, hours. Your parents, your families are interested in your long-term success. Okay? Now, what are some of the solutions that we can use as families, as together as communities, to help us guard against some of the risks involved with these? Okay? Number one, make dua. It's not like when you've failed all else, then you turn to dua. No. Number one. Okay? If we're going to fight back against the machines, then we need dua. This is our most important weapon. Right? You don't know how pernicious, we don't know how pernicious the impact of these machines are. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is above everything, more powerful than anything else, right? So this is our main number one ally, helper, supporter, our wali, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and especially for your children. For our children, we need to make dua. I already mentioned this, right? Turn off the dopamine circuits by turning off notifications on your devices. Be in charge of your own usage. What's this? This is quite a clever picture, right? This is a digital sunset. What do you think a digital sunset is? Pardon? You wake up to go and sleep? Yeah, okay. Digital sunset means, and I don't want to give you the impression that I'm good at doing this myself, right? I don't want to be a hypocrite, but this is something we all need to work on. Digital sunset is, beyond a particular time, no more electronic devices. We need to build that discipline in us, right? Beyond, turn off the Wi-Fi, turn off any digital device beyond a particular time. Unless you have a pacemaker, yeah? Just disclaimer. But everything else, turn off the Wi-Fi. The world won't end. Trust me, there's a button on the Wi-Fi router. You can turn it off. Netflix will end, but the world will not end. Right? This also means that when you wake up, the first thing you do is not check your phone. Right? Before you check your phone, maybe you pray your salah, maybe you say assalamu alaikum to your family, maybe you have a meal together. And then, when you're in control of your day, you're in control of your own sovereignty, then turn on your phone. Right? And this requires us to not use our phones as alarm clocks. I always use this excuse to myself, right? This is bad. Now you can get alarm clocks that don't have the phone function. You know this? You can buy them on, I'm not going to mention the name, but you can buy them on any website. It's really new. Look at the subhanAllah technology, yeah? An alarm clock without the phone, without the Facebook apps and all of that kind of, just simple alarm clock. And they're so much cheaper than phones, subhanAllah. Yeah? Buy an alarm clock. Beyond a particular time at night, we have to, ya fathers, we have to lead by example. Right? Why do the kids, as soon as they can walk and talk, they want one of these? Why? Because let's be honest, they see us on them all the time. Yeah? If they saw us reading, or doing something productive, maybe they'd want to get involved in that. Allahu A'lam. Right? So we have to lead by example. It's hard, but we have to do this. This is going to make me very unpopular, but under the age of 25, please consider your access to these types of services. Right? I always tell young brothers and sisters, especially with these things, free games, no free games. Don't play free games. That includes Fortnite. Right? Don't play Fortnite. These games are, especially remember, when something's free, you're the product, not the consumer. When something is free, you know for certain that they have the dopamine hijacking mechanisms to refine to a T. This makes me unpopular with the parents, because I tell young people, if you want to play some games, go out and buy nice, good, expensive games. Because that way you know you're the consumer. You're not being lured in by these free games to sell advertising to or whatever. Alright? We mentioned this, lead by example. Okay, first and foremost, and during and at the end, make dua. And yes, so we talked about attention economy. Important to understand some of the background that we live in an economy now that rewards, and that is set up to reward increasing time spent on site. It's done by artificial intelligence algorithms outside of the control of the human beings that program them now. And they were programmed with intimate knowledge of human psychology, brain chemistry even. They have intimate details of our personality, what makes us tick, what makes us click. And this has led to a whole host of issues: addiction, mental health issues, FOMO, fear of missing out, right? And we have to now fight back as a species, let alone a community. As a human species, we have to now fight back against these machines now. It just sounds so too dystopic. We need to fight back against the machine. We need to regain control of our own, schedules, our own discipline, our own willpower, inshallah. And Allah is our helper in this, inshallah. Next week, we're going to go into a bit more detail on some of the risks, how to practically mitigate them. Okay, this was a bit of an introduction. So if there's any questions, any comments, then Bismillah. Otherwise, we'll call it a night. Yes?
What day is the
Next week, inshallah, Friday. Isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you say free games you should go on, but are paying games also trying to capitalise on your attention? Why? What? Surely they should be doing the same thing, right? To get you hooked on them.
Good question. The brother said, you said stay away from free games, but surely games that you pay for, they're also geared towards making you addicted and so forth. And that's true. But free games are worse. Right? Because free games, number one, you're being lured in for something, unless it's made by a charity or something, which no game is. And number two, free games, they don't have to meet the same standards for when you launch an official game on an official platform. So they can be very simple and simplistic and just crudely kind of refined to the T when it comes to exploiting dopamine circuits in our brains, right? So at least with the games you pay for, you know that you're buying something. You're the consumer here. You're not being used to sell and buy advertising against. And again, obviously, every game by its nature, there's some level of addictiveness into it. But want to be practical here. I could easily tell you don't play any games, don't use any devices, and so forth. Barge into your kids' rooms and take away the devices. But mashallah, our kids, they're 10 steps ahead of us. So if we turn something off, they're going to know how to turn it back on again. So, and that I forgot to mention this part in the solutions, that we have no recourse but to have a good and open relationship with our children, that we can give them advice, right, and also hear their concerns and their needs when it comes to these electronic devices and kind of online services. So we can communicate properly between them what the risks are and how to effectively mitigate them, right? And we'll go into that in more detail next week, inshallah. Yep.
In the old days, if you took a toy away from a child, the way you would appease them was by giving one a better toy to distract them from what they lost. Now these algorithms know our children and know ourselves better than ourselves. How do you replace? How do you? Because presumably you then have to learn about your children yourself in order to find out what's better, so there isn't revolution, rebellion, and an upset. So it's about that replacement. What are the roads to replacing?
That's a good question. What are the roads to replacing these algorithms in our children's lives, right? And the only thing I can think of is to cultivate other interests, right? Remember when you were young, the thing that the positive, the weapon that we have against these algorithms that are geared towards creating like a sedentary, mediocre kind of new class of individuals, right? That just get everything absorbed into them. One of our strongest weapons materially is the fact that a young person, when he or she is challenged and succeeds at something they work hard at, that is, Allahu Alam, that's originally what the dopamine circuit was created for, right? That it still gives you a more genuine and more long-lasting happiness and interest in that thing. So we need to cultivate and nurture, go out of our way to cultivate those things in our children, those interests that they can excel in, whether it's sport, it's art, it's even technology, other things, ironically. So an interest that we nurture and inculcate into the children, whereby they'll get involved in something productive, and that's what the dopamine circuit is, Allahu Alam, was created for them in the first place, to help them reward, stay motivated on longer path to doing something productive, to acquiring a skill, to a good hobby, and that kind of stuff. So Allahu Alam, but these are things that we need to discuss together to get ideas, how to see what works, because this is all experimental, right? Good questions, Jazakallah khair. Any more comments, questions? Be honest, how many of you are eager to just pick your phones up right now and check your Facebook or WhatsApp messages yeah? Some of you already have, but this is something, naturally we will we might not notice, but we do it all the time. You notice, for example, when you after Salah, yeah, when you turn around, if you're the Imam especially, you turn around, you see, immediately loads of people are just taking their phones to, astaghfirullah, see what they've missed. Yeah? And it's empowering, another thing we can do is empowering to just leave your phone at home. Right? You feel that hurt, that pain, right, for a while, but then you'll get over it. The problem is, when it comes to anything related to your brain, to your nature, when it's something that becomes a habit, when these dopamine circuits, when you don't resist them yourself, what is initially chemical becomes structural changes in the brain, for example. So what might have been an easy to resist urge at the beginning, if you don't resist it, you let it develop into a habit, it actually changes the architecture of your brain. So what was something that was communicated by like a neurotransmitter, a chemical, which is temporary, it dissolves after some while, that will just eventually, if you imagine walking down a path so many times, it will eventually become a permanent path. So it will alter your synapses in your brain, for example, or around your heart, or different muscles, for example, like that. So if it hurts to leave your phone at home, that's a good sign that you should try and do that. I should try and do that as well. Yeah. Any more questions, comments? Yeah.
What's the difference between someone who always gets addicted to go on their phone, search the kind of new things or whatever, any posts or anything, to someone who always likes to do their studying? What's the difference between them? Is there something that the person who likes studying doesn't have that the other person does, or other ones have?
What's the difference to someone who's addicted to social media and who's addicted to studying?
Yeah.
See, it could be that this a similar mechanism is being used, right? And this is, anything Allah created in us, we don't say necessarily it's evil just for the sake of being a test for us or whatever. There could be good uses for it, right? We're being judged on how we train ourselves. For example, dopamine is very important in creating good habits. When you really convince yourself that, and when you maybe memorize a page of Quran, that feeling you get that, I've done something productive, right? And that's what we should encourage with young people, especially young people where brain is more elastic, right? When you create this good habit, you get a dopamine hit whether it's studying something new, memorizing something, or even in the gym when you go from one weight to another, you're lifting a bigger weight, you get that rush, that happiness, right? The problem is these things which were, Allahu A'lam, maybe they were created to help us build good habits, to do productive things. These are being hijacked to do pretty much useless things. Like you're playing a game where you're watering a plant, for example, and the plant grows, and you get that. There's no plant in real life, but the effect on you is the same, because we weren't created to live in cyberspace. We'll talk about cyberspace next week, inshallah. But cyberspace is a metaphor for where your consciousness is when you're engaging with these devices, right? Now, your brain, your body, your hormones, they can't tell that well between something happening in a game or something happening in real life, right? But that means its effect is real on you. Imagine that plant you're watering in your game, it dies. You'll actually have a hormone response. You'll increase your maybe adrenaline. You'll have oxytocin levels, serotonin levels change, endorphin levels change. Dopamine is one of them, right? It has an effect on you. So this is why we can't say real life anymore. Kind of physical life and digital life, it's all real. It has a real impact on people. So maybe, to answer your question, that person worked hard to make himself interested, make himself acclimatized or addicted to, you can say, studying. Right? And that has its own challenges as well. Could be good, could be a challenge for that person. Right? And someone addicted to social media, the main difference is the person addicted to social media is largely addicted to something useless compared to someone addicted to, studying or working or a particular skill or whatever, right? So for that person, you'd still have another discussion with that person thinking, wait a minute, if you're maybe doing something because of the habit, because of the addiction, you still need to consciously think about it in order to be rewarded by Allah. You still have to have the intention behind something, right? Maybe you're just got a habit of doing good deeds. You'll be rewarded for creating that habit, but it's still a challenge for you to, to try and think hard about why am I doing this? Am I doing it to please Allah? Am I doing it just for that dopamine hit inside? It makes me feel good, right? That brings its own challenges, but essentially, it's very, very similar. Different types of addiction. Yes, Sheikh.
One of the solutions you have mentioned that you have to be a role model. So my question is, what if my protective life is attached with these devices? How will I have to? Is it something good or bad for my child, for my kids?
Very good question. Yeah, similar for me. I mean, if somebody might be working. Somebody might be memorizing Quran using an iPad or something. Something like this. You're being productive, but it's attached to these devices. I don't know. We have to think about this. Yeah. How do we communicate that to our children? Maybe we should separate it from our children from a young age, right? For example, Yes, so clever now. Yeah, mashallah. For example, one brother told me, he's a psychiatrist, he said, because I work at home a few days a week, he said, be careful for when you're working, you engage with these devices, or you're doing something, you're busy, and when your child comes to you, how do you act? Yeah? You're doing something important, yes. But when your child comes to you and he sees, I've been standing here and he's not interacting with me, or I'm calling him and he's saying, wait a minute, go over there, and not giving me attention, that could bring some issue into the child as well. So that's why I thought, I try to do the productive things with these devices in my office, in my home. I close the door, and then when I come out and when I'm interacting with the children, I try and keep it in my mind that if I get a call when I'm with my children, don't answer the call then, for example. Or, make some excuse, go into another room and then answer the call. Some little things like this. Because we want to be cognizant of the impact our children, that's being had on our children, that they are just absorbing. Right? They're learning things implicitly. They're learning, for example, that this is something between me and Baba. Right? And if I want to be important, I have to get beyond this or get something like this as well. This is something they might learn implicitly. Right? They might remember, my Baba was always on his phone and he didn't have time for me or something like this. It's a mushkila. Yeah? It's a good question. We need to think about practically how to, get around that. Jazakallah khair. Okay, now you can all go and check your Facebooks and Twitters and Instagrams and Snapchats. Okay. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك واشهد ان لا اله الا انت واستغفرك واتوب اليك والسلام عليكم ورحمه الله وبركاته.